Hey, Arnie Malham here, Nashville, Tennessee. I'm the founder of CJ Advertising and Legal Intake Professionals, a company that I started and ran for about 20 years. In 2017-18, I sold those companies and have since been consulting, doing some speaking, and relaxing a little bit.
Very good. But you've got a thing called the Better Book Club.
That's my side hustle, Dominic. I have Better Book Club, which is the concept we used in our company to help grow our people, help getting them to read in a scalable, sustainable way. And so I'd love to talk about that if you have time, but it's
Oh
it's
yeah,
like
no,
my
look. Do you know what? We're going to start there. We're going to start there, right? Because
okay.
I ask podcast guests, and later on we're going to ask you, what books do you read?
Yeah.
And the reason I asked that at the beginning when you and I were chatting before we started recording is because I interviewed somebody I've known for a long time who's an author, and I said to him, "What books do you read?" And he went, "I don't read." And it was and it was like, he goes, "I write, Dom, I don't read." I'm like, okay, right, fine.
Yeah.
But I find that you obviously read, right? You wouldn't have started something called the Better Book Club unless you were a reader. So, why do you think reading is valuable?
Well, here's my phrase. I stole it from someone, as I've done almost everything in my life. As Cameron Harold says, R&D, rip off and duplicate. But the only difference between me today and me in 5 years are the books I read and the people I meet. And the only difference in you between you now and you in 5 years, the books you read and the people you meet. And when I say read, I mean listen, absorb podcast, take in information, right? And then the people you meet, how you apply that sort of information. And so I read because it grows me. I wanted my people to read because I knew it would grow them. And I knew if I couldn't grow my people, I couldn't grow my company. And what I found out there is this myth that CEOs have that where they think, oh, I'm going to read a book, I'm going to like it, I'm going to buy 20 copies and pass it out, and everyone's going to read it, and then we're all going to be on the same page. And as much as I want, you think that works, it doesn't work, and it doesn't work anywhere in a sustainable way. And so, book clubs are started in companies all the time, but they do not last. I challenge you to tell me a traditional book club that has actually survived time, right, and scale. And so we invented Better Book Club, which is a way for people to reward their people for reading to create the habit that then changes their lives and their families' lives and your company's life forever.
Yeah, and do you know what? I lots of time. I work with a number of, at any one time, maybe half a dozen CEOs and their leadership teams. And one of the perennial challenges is this: the company's growing, and some of the people are growing,
Yeah.
and then some of the people aren't.
Yeah.
But they've been around, they've been with you for 5 years, and all of a sudden they can no longer, the job that they have is now too big for them. And, or, we've got a new client starting with us soon, and their leadership team is 15 people. Right. And the owner said, look, I know it's too big, Don, but I've just never had the difficult conversation with any of these people. I'm hoping you can help me have the
Yeah.
difficult conversation with some of these people that the job's got too big for them. And so I think, that having a mechanism that along the way, because, by the time you've realized the job's too big for somebody, there's too big a gap. They can't
Yeah.
close that gap. And they don't often, do well with being demoted.
And once they feel that pressure, they get defensive, and suggestions become something they push away from instead of embrace, right? And so it
Yes.
becomes the wider the gap, the more the defensiveness. And what we found is that by getting people to absorb information, and the other difference in our concept and everyone else's, it's not read this, which people push back on. It's read anything. It's not the book, it's the habit. It's not the book,
Yes.
it's the habit, right? If I can get you to enjoy absorbing a book once, then I've got a much better chance of getting it done twice. And every time you do it, it exponentially raises the potential for habit. So Better Book Club is about creating the habit of reading so that people can uh, take on that gap on their own terms without being defensive.
Well, what we do is one of our sort of brand promises is I say to people, look, we can't promise to make you learn, but we can promise to make sure that you have no end of opportunity to learn.
Yeah.
And so we provide free business books for all the coaches, all the clients we're coaching. And they go, God, that must cost you a fortune. And I say, it does, but it's worth it, because then I know who's reading what,
Yeah,
right?
it's
And
the
so I
chief.
know, I know if I'm coaching the executive team, I know which of them are reading, and I know what they're reading. And honestly, I'm like you. I don't care what they're reading. Sometimes I go, "Oh, that's interesting. I haven't read that for a while. I might reread that." Or there's a book that they've asked for that I haven't read. I'll read that as well. But the performance gap between the teams that read and the teams that don't read, it's just stark. Because like
Yeah,
you
and the
can't know something that you don't know. Whereas, as you say, you read a book, you know something you didn't know before.
and you mentioned reread, Dominic, because rereading is something we all need to do more. Like go back and read your favorite book. Mark your top book or two books from each year, and then make a point to go reread. Because when we reread, we come at it we're in a different place in our life.
Yeah,
We absorb different things. The message, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And it gives us an opportunity to learn something in a different way, see it from a different perspective, because we have a different perspective. And
yeah,
that goes back to my point of stop passing out books for people to read. Your last book is not their next book, right? It
yeah.
every all As a CEO, we're tempted to be so excited by the last conference we went to, the last speaker we heard, the last book we read, and we come back and we spew, 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 and our teams just wait for us to calm down and go to the next thing. It's not about the new idea. It's about scalable and sustainable programs that grow your team. And so I'm on a rant and I'm on a tangent, but the when I stopped trying to force feed my people and started letting them grow themselves was the turning point for our business to become just a solopreneur to something where I had an entrepreneurial opportunity.
So, CJ Advertising, I probably
Yeah.
know what that is. Legal Intake. Oh, well,
Yeah.
just tell me give me a quick thumbnail sketch of those two
So
businesses.
CJ Advertising was an ad agency here in the States, and we did nothing but focus on personal injury lawyers. We built brands for personal injury lawyers. I know that's the reaction we get
That's
in every
that's
present.
like selling cigarettes, isn't it? I mean,
It,
that's
it,
not a
it
social
well,
good.
I believe it is social good. I
I'm
believe
only teasing you. I'm only
Yeah, I
teasing you.
believe that because in a not it's not a perfect system, but injury lawyers make the world safer. They hold people accountable, and when no one
Yeah.
else is fighting for you, they come to bat. Right? They take a piece
Yes.
of the prize, but they come to bat, and no one else is willing to do it. And
It's
so,
different. It's just the difference between Europe and the US. So in the US, people legislate to make change, and in Europe, the governments go do things. So it's just different.
in here, this was our opportunity. This was our niche. We were really good at it, right? We did it for 20 years. And then we were so good at it that we produced sometimes more results than our clients could handle. They would say, we can't handle this many calls. And so we developed a call center to help them answer the calls. So we had two
Aha.
separate businesses. One was the ad agency that created the calls, the other was a call center that took calls and processed those claims, those opportunities. And so this business, it was unique because of our niche. We had very talented people working in the agency with all kinds of high level skills. But we also had a call center that employed we paid between $12 and $25 an hour to people to come do a job, and we put them all in one building. And we operated 24/7, 365, and it all had to scale and sustain. And that's the culture that we called work. We called it camel culture. And the book I wrote about it was called Worth Doing Wrong, because our method was just keep doing it wrong until we got it right. And so we would just push forward on that.
And that's interesting. So because those two businesses from a cultural perspective feel very different. It's like, that's you are almost tantamount to fail there. It's like when acquisitions go wrong, it's because the two cultures were wrong.
Yeah.
Did you have two different completely management structure? Did it only come together in your head? Were you the only
Well,
one who
we
had to content switch?
well, what was true in both companies was that we would tell people, if you come to work here, no matter what job you take, you'll grow while you're here. You'll leave here a better person than you came,
Right.
right? And
So you
that
had some
and that there's
fundamental principles or values that you shared.
Yes, and so the core value kind of stuff, that was all the same across both companies because those were my core values, right? And so we would all our cultural programs, and we had dozens of them. We called it camel culture, and we
Why
put all
why
our
is it called camel culture?
that's a whole nother episode, right, of the podcast. But and let me go there for a minute, Dominic. People should name their culture. When you name the culture, all of a sudden it's there's something there, right? When we just have these 5 or 6 different programs and that are just floating out there, once you name it, and we would create a outline of the camel, and everything that was cool about our culture we put inside the camel, and so that you could see our culture and you could talk about our culture. It became alive. We had a mascot for our culture. Every sports team has a mascot. Your culture needs a mascot. It needs a name. It needs something that people can grab onto. So we put everything in our culture of both companies in camel culture. We bragged about it. We talked about it, and that was just part of how we sustained this culture.
What did you call your employees?
Team members.
Team
We
members? Well,
very rarely
no, I
you
was just thinking like at Rackspace,
camels, yeah,
ours was everyone was a racker, I suppose the symbol was the straight jacket because it was crazy, crazy fanatical support. Only crazy people would deliver fanatical
yeah.
support. So
Well, we had camel costumes. If you go to uh, in my book, there's pictures of all this stuff, but we had people would dress in camel costumes and then do fun things around the office. It was part
yeah,
of our the reason you want to be at work kind of culture. But we'd also go run in 5Ks and show up at children's events and it's part of our give back program with camels with a cause. And so all these things had a reason, had a purpose. They tied back to our core values that went through both companies that allowed people to come into work every day and know that everyone in that building was there to help them become better, and therefore they were there to help others become better.
so that so what were the core values then?
Sorry, you're gonna stump me up here. So it's growth, respect. It's been 6 years.
Yeah,
Growth,
yeah, yeah.
respect, confidence, and optimism. Those were the
Okay.
core values, right? And
Uh-huh.
so when from the moment we began the interview process, how they treated our receptionist, where they parked, were they on time, to when people left, how we would go through extra steps to help them in their next opportunity, no matter what it was. We treated people with respect. We created programs, and you told me about how you did as well, to help people grow because we wanted them to have confidence and be optimistic about things that they did.
Yeah.
That was just how we played it out. We went through good times and bad times over 20 years economically in the country, culturally, all these things. But we wanted work to be a place that people came, that they were happy to be there, right?
Yeah.
Home was where they maybe weren't respected. It wasn't the cleanest environment. They were given hassles. They didn't always weren't always appreciated. But at work, the bathrooms were spotless. There was fruit everywhere. People were friendly, happy, optimistic, and they helped each other. That's the culture we wanted. But you don't just get there by wanting it, right? You have to have programs that pull people through that opportunity.
When I'm thinking about you sort of doing consulting work around this with other clients, then
Yeah.
with what do you have a framework? Where do you start?
So here's the framework: is there's 5 things that make a great culture, and I'll go really fast.
Yeah.
But the first is, uh, and the primary one is, culture reflects leadership. What so many leaders do not understand today is that whatever they have right now, it's the one they deserve. It's the one
Yes.
they're the leader,
Do you know?
and
Do you know?
culture reflects leadership.
When when the parents of the parents of the classmates of my children are complaining about their children, in my head, I'm going, "You get the children you deserve." It's
Well,
exactly the same
I
thing. It's
I don't know,
exactly the
Dominic, if I
same.
can go that far, because but I do know that we get the culture we deserve. That we when you don't have a great culture, you've either you've neglected it, you've tried to delegate it, you haven't been consistent. You say one thing and do another, right? Where it's your culture is exactly a reflection of who you are as a leader. And so if you want a better culture, you have to become a better leader. And I have a framework to get you there, right? And
Yep.
that's the opportunity. Not everyone can, but you will always have the culture you deserve. You will
Yes.
always
Well,
have the
and
culture you deserve.
it's a bit like going to the gym, isn't it? It's like, could I be, could I be lighter and fitter? Yes, certainly. Can you give me a silver bullet? Oh, you mean I actually have to do some work? You know what? I'm happy.
It's just like if you go through your 10 CEOs and you say, describe your culture, and they write down, they give you a one-page description of their culture or even a sentence, but then go to their teams and say, do the same thing, you're going to get two different stories in a percentage of the cases. I would say large percentage, but you're going to get to what we think our culture is, who we think we are as a leader, who we think we are, by the way, as other things too. It's not necessarily who we are. So it's first accepting that who I am, how I lead defines my culture, where I park, how I treat people, how I greet people, how I say goodbye, how when I work, when I don't, what my expectations are. All these things go into who you are as a leader. Grapple with that and say, I want to have a better culture. Then I'll take you down a process to get you to a place where you can have a better culture. That's what I'm. That's what my speech is about. My talk is about. That's what my consulting is about.
You mean the owner doesn't get the spot by the door?
I think that's a bad idea.
Doesn't get to pay, just doesn't get to park in the disabled space or the handicapped space?
You can park wherever you want, but your culture will reflect that. So just know that. I personally, I parked in the last spot, the furthest away, and I walked the farthest. That's who I was as a leader. And I'm not saying you should do that, but that's who I was as a leader. I wanted to serve my people, not them serve me. And so that helped me create the culture that I wanted. You don't have to do that. You can go at it the other way. You can have a different organization, but just know it's part of your culture.
Yeah, be deliberate.
Name your culture. Know that if you want a great culture, here's what happens. I'll tell a story and a CEO or executive will say, I'm going to go do that. And then they go back and they're so excited to do it, right? And they think they are going to manage the Better Book Club in their organization. And when they say, this is so important to me, I'm going to do it, I say, well, then I know it's going to fail because you don't have time to manage Better Book Club. 1,000 other things are going to happen the minute you walk in your office, right? And you're going to be consumed with those, and this is going to fall to the edge of your desk. And then they say, okay, well, I'm going to give it to my chief of blank. And I go, great, it's going to fail because they don't have time either. Give your cultural programs to champions that are as low on your org chart as you possibly can. They have more time to do it. They want to impress you. They want to support each other. You don't have to pay them more to do it. It's part of their job, but they'll take pride in it and it will be a priority where for you, it will be off your desk within 20 days.
Oh, there's a chapter on that in my book, which is, it's like, how do you find these people who will be the future managers? And they volunteer, right? And they've got no authority, and yet they manage to lead a program, and consistently deliver. And it's like they've put their hand up. They want you could make them a manager in the future.
Yeah, and sometimes you have to. What you in our pre-talk, you talked about how you saw promise in people and you told them that you gave them tasks to challenge them and to help them see their own potential, right? We talked about that earlier. Giving someone a program to champion allows them to see their potential, to earn the respect of their peers and of leadership and in themselves, to respect themselves for something they've done. And if you have multiple programs, which you should, that all tie to your core values, which they should, and they're run by different champions that are low in the organizational chart, here's the amazing thing. They will support each other. They will help. They know how hard it is to get it done. And so you want them to help. They will help each other. And the rest of the team will way more participate in a program led by one of their peers than led by you or one of your leadership people. Right.
Totally.
So it all comes together when people that you're trying to build lead the programs that in turn build your company. And when I say a champion for each program, I mean it. If you load up one person because they're great with 6 or 8 things, they will eventually fail. One champion per program gets it done, makes it sustainable. You give them they have a checklist. You give them support from the top, and you let them roll.
Building on that, I don't know if you've come across a company called Next Jump.
Next Jump. Tell me.
So what they do is they have the programs. I'm going to ask you what your programs were in a second, but they would have a program. And one of them was a sort of culture visit. So every quarter they would open up their business to people to come and look at their culture. What they would say is that's an opportunity for people in our organization to develop public speaking skills. And so we've identified you, Arnie. We think that you'd be a better person if you had better public speaking skills. So that's sort of, we're going to help you develop your, what they call their backhand, and we need you to develop your backhand in a way that doesn't cause problems below the waterline. So it's not revenue impacting, because if you fuck up culture day, it's okay, right? No customer is injured, and you get the checklist and you do it and you deliver it for 6 months. And the person who coaches you is the person who did it for the previous 6 months. And then you need to bring on two other people, your right-hand person and your left-hand person. The idea being you bring your right-hand person with you on the journey so that you can be their coach 6 months from now. So you've got this constant, which I just always thought was, a next level version of the thing that I might have done or you might have done. But what other programs other than Better Boot Club did you have people delivering?
Well, back to your point, if you can't give a tour, you might not have a culture. And if you want to know if people understand your culture, go ask random people in your company about certain programs you think you're doing, and you'll find out you're not even doing them, right? Or they have no concept of them. So we wanted everyone in our company to be able to give a tour, but certainly, just like you said, have designated tour people because people would come to Nashville is a destination, much like a lot of great cities in the world, and other entrepreneurs would come to Nashville, and we would offer tours of camel culture so they could see, and it helped us be at our best all the time. Like, we didn't have to prepare for company; we were always ready for company because we were
Yeah.
always ready to give a tour, right? And
Well,
and so it just created a lot of pride and good stuff in the organization.
it's ages since I've had a conversation with somebody like you where like I
Yeah,
remember
yeah.
at Pier one of the things we did in the onboarding is we said, uh, at the end of the first month, there's a script for the tour of the office. And at the end of the first month, if you had a new person in your team, they had to take the team on the tour.
That's
Right.
it,
And
right?
then their team would give them, man, they would give them some really
Yeah,
harsh
yeah. You
feedback,
see
right?
how much you get wrong, right?
Yeah, right. And so, you can't be signed off. You can't certify to do the tour unless your team tick the boxes. And because they've all done it and everyone was harsh to them, they're just going to kill you if you get it wrong. So, people are up all night sweating and they're nervous, and then they're taking the team on the tour. And it's like, then at the all hands, this guy's certified. He's now, do it. It's just great. Because,
Yeah. Well,
then instead of saying HR says, oh yeah, we did an onboarding and people know the values. It's like, how do you know? They listened to you for half an hour, but they didn't internalize it. Whereas, as you say, if you're going to have to give the tour, you need to know all these stories word perfect.
I'm gonna riff off of that into we had dozens of programs, Dominic. We could do an episode per program, but I'm gonna tell you about the thing that people I think really take. They take a few things from my talk. This is one of the top things. Is part of our onboarding and how we did onboarding. We did a 60-day checklist.
Yeah.
It's a checklist we hand to the team member, right? And on that checklist is every program that is otherwise in my book or in my program, and it had the name of the champion next to the program, right? And their job in the first 60 days of their employment with us was to go to that champion. So initiative, go find the person, make an appointment, sit down with them, and learn about the program. So they're learning about the program with the person who runs the program, right? And it's their responsibility. They At the end, you have to get through this checklist after 60 days, at which point they would bring the checklist to me, at which point I would tell them the story of our core values. I would take them to the war hall and show them all of our KPIs, and I would talk to them about how valuable they were to us and why we wanted them on the team. And I would ask them about they would hand me the checklist with initials from all my team leaders. So I knew they absorbed it over time and not in one day when everyone was frazzled.
Yeah.
So that the onboarding checklist in the team members' hands was the key to getting people up and running with our company.
Did you ever have people who didn't complete the checklist?
They wouldn't make it to the 60 days, right?
Well,
That's
that's
part of it.
it's like I don't have to make a decision that you're not staying. It's like the evidence is here. Goodbye. Yeah.
And you ask in that meeting, is there anything on this checklist that you think was a waste of your time? And you ask, is there anything that you've learned in the last 60 days that's not on the checklist that needs to be? And so you just keep improving it, right? With every onboarding opportunity. And then they now have the information to come to be a good camel from there, right? To be a good team
Yeah.
member from there.
Okay. Give us
So
another
that,
program. I'm loving
yeah.
this.
So
I tell you, sorry, I might have taken us off tangent. You were going to
I
say
don't
there are
even know where
five
we're,
things. Let me take you back then. You said when I'm talking,
yeah, yeah.
on stage, there are like five things. I'm not sure I'm not sure you said all five because
No,
I think
no,
I
we
just
didn't.
jumped in on number one and took us off somewhere.
Well, here. I'm just going to go through the five real quick so we can say
Sure.
we
We
can
did
check
it.
them off the list. One is I said earlier, if you can't grow your team, you can't grow your company. Like that's just the mindset. Is that I'm
Yes.
not here to extract. I'm here to grow them so they can grow me. It's not about what I can get from them. It's how I can make them better. And you spoke about that in our pre-talk about how it's important for people to realize their potential, and your job is to help them get there. Can't grow your team, can't grow your people. Number two is upstream communication is as important as downstream communication. We as leaders think we can bark orders out all the time and give these rants and talk about our goals, and we're always downstream, downstream, down. But if we don't have systems that allow us to listen upstream, that allow us to hear the voices of our front line, to learn from what they're learning, then we don't have near the opportunities that we think we do. Our biggest innovations in our company came from listening to our frontline people, and that ranged from everything from lunch with the boss, where I came and served lunch to my people and sat with them as they ate and talked about what they did on the job, and by the way, what they did with their personal lives. It was things we had a survey that we ran monthly that allowed people to put in information that always got published, that always got responded to. It gave them confidence in the system so that they knew that if they had a beef or if they had a pat on the back, that it would be heard and broadcast and responded to. It allowed people to trust the system instead of fear the system. And so we whether it was lunch with Arnie, or we called morale survey, monthly morale survey, or it was tenure celebrations. When they reached certain tenure points, we would go spend time with our people so that we could learn about them and that we could get a little more one-on-one time. We created routes to get information up so that we could learn from them. We had a monthly meeting where we took feedback from our team, and we would bring in information, and we would sit with our leadership team, and we would go round and round about trying to understand the feedback. We modified that meeting to include always 2 to 4 frontline people, and when they heard the same comments that we were baffled by, they could tell us exactly what they meant.
Yeah.
It was hearing, getting feedback, listening with your team, bringing in frontline people to hear that feedback and tell you what they meant by it. Game changer for us.
Yeah.
So upstream is important as downstream. I got stuck on that one. Number three, if you don't celebrate your milestones, no one will.
Oh,
We as entrepreneurs just going to go forward, forward, forward. Your team, your family, people around you, they need time to celebrate the milestones. Create systems that celebrate your milestones, that allow people to nominate the great things that are happening in the company, put them on the wall, cheer for them. If your company doesn't have a history, it may not have a future. Like create that history every year, celebrate your milestones, put them on the wall. After 3 to 5 years, all of a sudden you've got this history that everyone can be proud of. So if you don't do it, no one will. Celebrate your milestones.
I love that. I remember going to visit Seba Vision, and at Ragspace everything was digital, like all the technology. Like people are like, why would we print out photographs? They're on the shared drive. And I went to Seba Vision, and they had every time they had a Christmas party, they created this massive collage. And as you walked along their corridor, it was like every year, and it was just like it was there. You could see it, and it was. I came back and I went, we. You have to copy that. Like it's like Stations of the Cross in church. It's thinking about passage of time is important, joy is important, and the stories you tell, rituals, it's all important.
And how can you expect others to tell the story if you don't, right? If you don't
Yeah.
create a framework for them to tell the story. And so it's massively important that people understand it helps them understand what's important, what to celebrate, what's being cheered for, how to it teaches people how to respond. Number four, the best culture program, they are sanctioned by leadership, but they're led by champions. We talked about that earlier.
Yeah.
Allow people on the front line to lead your programs, as opposed to, you put everything on HR, they're going to fail. You try to take it on, they're going to fail. You give it to your COO, they just won't get it done. You've got to spread that work out, and give them the tools to be successful.
And do when you were talking about people visiting you, always open for a visit.
Yeah.
We were part of that. I've had companies where we've been part of Best of British tour, where there's a busload of entrepreneurs turn up and come around the office. And man, the pride that the people who ran those programs had to tell people visiting them about their programs. And also the people get used to it. And so when the third parties turn up and go, oh, that's amazing, they realize that it might not be the same everywhere else. And so, it helps that the grass is greener on the other side. It's like, oh, the grass is green here. People are amazed by what we do. And that it was just fantastic to see how excited people were to present their program when somebody, new came in and wanted to have a chat with them.
If somehow you're in this archaic system where one person's doing all that, they have a lot of ownership. They're frustrated, but no one else does. By spreading out these programs to multiple champions, everyone gets a chance to enjoy that ownership, that pride, to be responsible for it and not just tolerant of it.
Yeah.
So it's a big deal.
And what's your last one?
The last one, and we talked about this. Well, I said it. I just blurted it out earlier. If you can't give a tour, you may not know the culture. So
Right.
the key is that not just to have a culture that you can brag on, but a culture everyone can, and that they understand. Right? It's if you go ask 10 people the same question about a program that's important to you, and if you're getting even six different answers, you can do a better job, right?
Yeah.
You need a champion, you need a checklist, and they need permission to make it better. And so
Yeah.
that's the process. And so my job as an entrepreneur, rather, was to create champions, to keep programs going, to keep a culture alive that would power our program, that would increase tenure, which would lower turnover. And that's how we measured it. People say, well, how do you measure all this stuff? Tenure and turnover. If we have high tenure and low turnover, we made more money, Dominic. We were a
Yes.
specialist in a niche. We needed to know. We needed to do it better than anyone because we charged higher rates, and we needed to know more than our clients knew about every aspect of our agency. And the way that we got there was through tenure. The longer our people were with us, the more they knew, and the more experts they were regarded as.
I suspect that's a leading indicator. The lagging indicator is probably margin, which ultimately is the measure of your competitive advantage. But you're
Yeah.
delivering the competitive advantage through tenure and turnover.
That's right. And so one of
Fab.
the big things we did was we rewarded tenure like crazy because it was so important to us. We recognized it, we cheered for it, we gave people gifts. At 10 years, you got a Rolex in my company. Like
Yeah.
it was a big deal to be a part of our company and to be a leader in our company, in an industry that made you choke on your coffee when you first heard it. Like, remember that I'm working in an industry that most people don't even want to think about. And I've got people hitting 10, 15, and 20-year tenures because at our workplace, they're respected, they're appreciated, they contribute, they're a part of the success.
Yeah. That's fab. I
They're
love that.
they're they're and in our case, you know, look, I want to make sure that people understand the book that I eked out is called Worth Doing Wrong. And I ran my company for 10 years like a mad, angry tyrant that couldn't understand why his people weren't showing up, why they weren't there, why they didn't do their work right, why they didn't understand, why they didn't get the fact that I'm busting my ass trying to help, trying to give them a job. Like, I didn't get it. But the books I read and the people I met told me differently. EO was a massive part of my life. I started to listen to other people. John DeJulius, a customer service expert here in the States, I first heard the
And
words.
we've had him on the show.
I first heard this from him.
Started his hair salons with his wife. Totally.
The first time I heard the words "culture reflects leadership" was from him, and I
Yeah.
looked at myself and I realized I had exactly the culture I deserved. And at that point, I had to change me to change my company into one that was sustainable and scalable.
So 10 years in, you had this epiphany,
Thanks
and
to
then
John.
another 10 years and you exited.
That's
Yeah.
right. That's exact.
Fab.
That's the story. And trust me, I still, even to this day, sometimes I have this random thought of how I behaved as an angry tyrant boss, and I'm ashamed of it. I'm ashamed of how I treated people, what I didn't understand about how to lead people, who I was. And it's not to say that from that point forward I got it all right, but from that point forward, I knew it was my responsibility to get it all right.
Yeah. Fab. What books should people read?
Oh, they
Like
should read.
well, they should read your book, but
They should read what makes them happy, right? Not everyone, some books are. Patrick Lencioni writes fables. Some people love it, some people hate it. Vern Harnish tends to write more of a textbook style. Here's how to do it. Some people love it, some people hate it. First, read until you find what you like, and then keep reading that. But I hate telling people what to read. First, I
oh,
ask, what do you want to learn? If you tell
oh,
me what
okay.
you want to learn, I'll tell you the top 3 to 5 books I've read on that topic.
Well, we've
So
been talking today about culture. So the
yeah,
top 3 books on culture.
uh, I would say that Cameron Herold wrote a book called Double Double. Uh,
Yeah.
he that I've stolen many ideas from Cameron, and he, with his permission. Jack Daly, I don't know if you know Jack.
Yeah, yeah.
Jack,
Haven't had him on yet, but we need to get him on.
his book on selling, magically enough, is great for things you want to do to encourage people to grow and be awesome. It's a great culture book. Uncontainable. Uh, Kip Kip Tyndall. Have you
Okay.
read
No.
Uncontainable? Might be one of my, like, he's the book describes him as the leader I wanted to be. Like that's the book I read and said, "That's who I wanna be." So, Uncontainable, he's the founder of the Container Store.
Ah,
Uh,
okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, and so that was fabulous. Upstream, I'm going off here, by Dan Heath. Upstream, I thought was a great, insightful book about how we solve problems. Um, there's so many. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't wanna not I like, there's friends of mine that I'm not mentioning, uh, like Ron, do you know Ron Lovett?
Yeah.
Outrageous Empowerment. He writes a
Yeah.
great book.
That's
Um,
fantastic.
Jesse Cole, what he's doing with the Savannah Bananas, Find Your Yellow Tux. I look, worthdoingwrong.com, uh, book recommendations. It's by category. I'm just my cheat sheet right now. And no one can read them all, Dominic. No one can read. I've read 384 books, I think. I've chose to read 384 books since college to now. It's all documented in my Better Book Club account. Uh, and there are people that have read 4, 5, and 600. I think you've got more than 400 documented in there.
I,
So
yeah, I stopped. I haven't put anything in for at least a year.
yeah,
Right.
you got
But
to come on,
I
catch
get
up,
through,
man.
I
You got
get
to
through I get through 2 books a week.
you got to catch up because your other coaches are beating you. Like you've fallen
Oh,
out of the top position.
I'll get
But
that sorted out.
Love is Free, the founder of Chipotle,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
wrote a great
Yeah.
book. I mean, I can
Walk is
just go.
extra. Yeah.
Yes, and it's so they're out there. All the secrets are in the books,
Yes.
right? Go read and find what speaks to you. Pick a path and be purposeful with how you want to be a leader, so that you get a culture that reflects that. If you're just wishing for a better culture and you're still an asshole of a boss, you're just not going to get there. Culture reflects leadership. You're the leader. Put on your big person pants and knock it out of the park.
Fab. Look, I've got a couple of quick fire. I've got some quick fire questions for you. You ready? What drives you every day?
Um, I I want to help people see what I saw at that 10-year mark. Like, I wanna present the opportunity to create a culture in a way that people feel is attainable and doable and that they have the capacity to do it. And when I have the opportunity to get a person over that hump of, "I hate my culture, I love my culture," that's what drives that wakes me up in the morning, and you can see it, like, I go on rants like this because I know it's possible. I know it's within people, but they have to realize it.
Okay, fabulous. What's your genius?
I've always struggled with that question. Like my friends have to always remind me of like, I think I don't have any skill. I do nothing well, right? Uh, but I believe part of it is that I'm willing to do it wrong until I get it right.
Okay.
I'm like, I 3 years ago, my wife and I bought a farm. I'd never driven a tractor in my life. I'm a pretty good tractor driver right now, right? I had to do it wrong long enough to get it
Well,
right, and I'm willing to do that. I'm willing to go through that.
have you have you terrified yourself with agricultural machinery?
I should
Because
like it, I
you should be
shouldn't.
dead, shouldn't you?
I should have, or at least half an arm gone or something, right? Chainsaws
It is.
and yeah,
It's terrible. It's terrible. They
yeah,
just give you. They just say, "Yeah, there's the keys."
yeah, yeah.
Yes.
You'll be fine.
What unpopular opinion do you hold?
Ooh, uh, man, you should have warned me. These are hard questions.
I know. That's why we don't warn anybody, because otherwise it'd be too easy.
What unpopular? I know I've got one. I know I've got several. Um, I'm gonna have to pass. I'm
Ah,
blank.
okay,
I'll come
right.
back to that
That's
one.
fine. It's fine. We've got others, right? What's the
Yeah.
most significant risk you've taken?
When we started Legal Intake Professionals, we thought we knew how to do it. We opened on a Friday. We had 4 clients. We opened on a Friday at 5 o'clock when they were closing. We were there to answer their phones after hours. Within an hour, I realized we had no idea what we were doing. Now we worked for 3 months to get to that point. So I had to call the 4 clients and say, We're not ready. We don't know what we're doing." We closed the business and we reopened in 2 weeks, and then we ran for 15 years. We'd never closed after that. And so that, looking back, that was one of the scariest points because we put so much into it and realized we just tripped over the first step, like, and just face planted so badly. So that's probably
Oh,
the most significant thing we overcame.
um, how do you measure success? Not in business, but in life.
Relevance,
Okay.
um, relationships, um, and resourcefulness.
Okay.
Just to stay on that thrift. Like, my ego needs to be relevant. Like, you asking me to be on this show makes me feel relevant. I'm dumb enough to admit it, right? It makes me feel great, right? Resourcefulness is something that find a way.
Yeah.
You stop complaining and find a way. And often we can't find our own way. We have to have conversations with others. We all have blind spots. Other people can see our blind spots. We can't see our own. And so we get stuck in things that we need to have a discussion with someone else to help figure out, whether that's friends or forum mates or leadership teams or family. Find a way to be resourceful and get to the answer. Stop, don't give up. Keep rocking forward.
Okay. Um, what's the most recent thing you've learned or recent skill you've acquired?
Well, I mean, not to, you know, harp on farming, but we grow lavender, and we in over here in probably in an unperfect climate. My wife and I are growing. We have like 1,200 plants, and I now know a lot about lavender, way more than I thought I ever would.
Right. Very good. What's the worst business advice you've ever received?
To not take the risk.
Okay.
To not take the risk. And this came in terms of, I was, we were trying to buy real estate. I was told you don't need to extend yourself on that. Turned out to be the best thing we ever did. Uh, Ideas that I would have, crazy ideas like Better Book Club to help our people learn the habit of reading. I was told that'll never work. It worked great. It probably made my companies more valuable than anything else we did. And so it's people telling you to stop when you're sure, right? When you have a hunch and everyone else tells you to stop, just at least go a little bit down that path. Or for us, it's been valuable.
Do you know what? I like the word unreasonable. I don't think anything great's ever been built by somebody who was reasonable.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
that,
yeah.
when people say no, you can't do that. Unreasonable people just go la 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 la. Heard you, but I'm going to do it anyway. What's the biggest myth in business?
Book clubs. It boss led book clubs. They're not sustainable. They're not scalable. They your team just wants it to go away, and eventually it does. Stop telling your people what to read and get them in the habit of reading.
Ah, brilliant. Arnie, what fantastic conversation. Great to chat with you today. Thanks for coming on.
Honored, as I mentioned, to be here. Love our commonality in terms of how we believe in people and what we do to promote the world of business and their teams, and just appreciate you so much, brother.
Good stuff.